keeping oneself out of the way. I've never had any strong feelings of belonging to one specific country, with its traditions and culture. I've never felt any roots grow inside me to such an extent that could keep me in one place. I think that this helped when I decided to go to Earth and hide from bureaucracy and the law. The first time my house was searched, a cop asked me if I'd been expecting it. My answer was yes. I was an anarchist and known to them as such, so I wasn't surprised. Nor was I surprised when I realized that it would be better to have a change. Choices like that are a question of responsibility. When you are fighting an enemy, you will also certainly want to escape from it and its repressive grip, even if you have to pay quite a high price and keep away from the places and the people you love. This was something that I had taken into account, something I knew might happen to me. So I wasn't surprised when it became real and urgent. But I was pretty confused, both because reality is always different to what you imagine and because I found myself in a situation I had never expected, becoming clandestine, not on my own or with my partner, but with my child. In fact, he was born a few months before, and I was still under new mother shock when I understood it was not the case to have my life ruined by the bullies of the law. There was no arrest warrant out for me at the time, but they started harassing me after arresting a comrade who was very close to me, and claimed they had identified a Roman gang. I didn't intend to be under pressure every day, and so I chose to go to Earth. The day after my departure, I learned that my house had been searched and that my partner had been harassed, which they kept on doing afterwards, also to my friends and relatives. I realized I had made the right choice. At first, it was very difficult. Even if, as I said, I had pictured that moment so many times, I was not ready, either at a practical or psychological level. For example, I had nowhere to go, and it wasn't easy to find a suitable place. My comrades were all well known to the cops, and that period was not at all calm or favorable. I think that many people were really worried, and solidarity, practical and effective solidarity, was not easy to practice and therefore to find. I was really sorry about that, and I am still absolutely convinced that this is something that comrades should discuss carefully in the future. I mean, we should try to create the minimal conditions so that comrades are not left alone with their problems and excluded from all their relationships. Coming back to my time in hiding, I felt the need to take all the things that made me feel at home with me wherever we went. Certain books, tapes, and objects, maybe I'm a bit fetishist, that kept me in touch with my previous life. In general, we succeeded in not being noticed wherever we went. I introduced myself to others as a mom taking her baby on holiday to healthy resorts. It was summer, and certain places would be healthy for anyone. I played my part very well. I was very careful about what I told anyone about us, and tried to be coherent in my role. I also made my attention more acute by focusing it on even the most insignificant details. It must be borne in mind that people, not to mention landlords, are very curious about a new member of their community, and that you cannot always evasively answer the questions, too many questions, they ask. Otherwise, you would seem strange. You have to be careful because in a normal situation, questions like, where do you live, what do you study, and what's your job, or even an invitation to dinner that you would rather refuse, and an unfriendly and unsociable answer could cause trouble. When you're in hiding, it might be dangerous either to make relationships or to be too reserved. It is quite a delicate situation. As I said, I tried to tell people the same story about myself, but I also tried not to give a picture that was too different from what I actually was. I mean that in the long run, I've been hiding for 6 years, it is impossible to be completely different to what you are. It was okay, for example, to be a mother taking care of her child, but I couldn't give a picture of myself as if that was my only aspiration, just to be a mother. My opinions, considerations, and way of being couldn't be completely repressed, even if they emerged in a softer and less obvious way. At the beginning, this was one of the most difficult aspects to cope with as I was a new mother, a situation that in itself presents a lot of contradictions that are not easy to sort out. Sometimes fear and anxiety were too strong, and I thought that I wouldn't manage to keep on going for long. I often had to suddenly run away from the place where I was staying because of the dirty job of the media. One of the TV programs that made me anxious and angry was Que la Visto, Who's Seen Her, a popular TV program calling for public participation in the sighting of missing persons. Or because my child's father was being followed, who, in the meantime, was living his normal life and meeting up with me occasionally. My moves, therefore, often occurred out of the blue, without me planning them. I often trusted my sixth sense, which I still do, which is not enough if it is not accompanied with the greatest attention. When I felt it was time to have a change, I prepared my stuff in a great hurry and moved to temporary accommodation until I found a more durable and reliable situation. In the long run, I realized that my first choice, i.e. a period in hiding while understanding what the judiciary wanted, would turn out to be the only one. The game, let's see if I can fool them, would go on. My relationship with my child's father deteriorated, pushing us further and further apart. It is impossible to keep a love affair alive if the parties involved don't both make the choice to live in hiding. The two lives inevitably become different, and moments together are burdened with tension because of the risks you are running. So we decided to split up, and I decided to make the big step. My child and I would go far away. At this point, I had to consider which place would be most suitable. First of all, I took into account the possibility of being able to walk in the streets without running the risk of being immediately recognized as a foreigner, and therefore of being stopped by the police. I needed a cosmopolitan town where I could be anonymous as much as possible. I also had to avoid contact with comrades so that I wouldn't be recognized. Furthermore, having a baby would make things much more difficult. Sooner or later, be it owing to health problems, school, or the need to guarantee him normal social relations, I would risk finding myself in the chains of bureaucracy. I therefore needed a place where structures for non-official residents, the so-called irregulars without stay permits, could be found. A place where the minimum social needs of a foreigner could be guaranteed, and I could walk around without running the risk of being arbitrarily stopped by the police, i.e. for no valid reason. A place where I could go out without necessarily taking an identity card with me, and where it was possible to find a way to survive. I chose the place and asked some friends of friends to put me up for a while, until I acquired knowledge of the environment and the capacity to live on my own. So I decided to venture, and crossed the border without my child, who was eventually brought to me. The separation was terrible, and so was the fear of not making it. I crossed the border with a rucksack on my back, and snow up to my calves. I remember being very excited at that moment, finding strength and a confidence that I had rarely experienced before. Finally, I made it. I was having a cappuccino in a foreign country after crossing that cursed border. I only hoped that my child would join me soon and without difficulty. I stopped for 2 days at a very dear comrade's place, and then I left by train for my final destination. I arrived on a splendid morning in May, warm and comfortable even though I was in the north. This seemed to me to be a good omen, and when my child joined me a week later, I felt safer and more determined because I was also out of Italy. In spite of this, I soon realized that the situation could become dangerously relaxed, which I absolutely had to avoid. So we started again. I didn't know how long it would last, but I did my best to make our freedom last as long as possible. I think that in cases like this, you mustn't stay in the same place for a long time, even if everything seems to be going well. You cannot avoid leaving traces if you stay in one place, at least in Europe, for too long. You have to move frequently, which I chose not to do. This wasn't due to resignation. As I said before, choices imply taking one's responsibilities, and I had also chosen to have a child. I didn't want to involve him in sudden transformations and changes that only concerned me. I also experienced periods of acute loneliness. I was afraid of love affairs, as I didn't trust anyone, and I couldn't find comrades to share rebel choices with. But I wasn't nostalgic, because I had managed to overcome any nostalgia for people and places. I convinced myself that everything would come back to me, and that I was living a break of an unlimited duration. This break, however, was worth living intensely. In fact, today I miss the people, the places, and the moments I experienced during this long and very emotional journey. I can't help saying, not that it was the best time of my life, especially as my life hasn't finished yet, but that it was certainly the period in which I understood best who I was and how I face life. I also understood that living beyond the rules and normality, with no name, surname, address, and a false number on one's ID card, stimulates creativity, imagination, and dignity, and makes you take back what's yours. Time is yours. Choosing and overcoming difficulties is yours. The decision to play the cat or the mouse is yours. The moment when you decide to say stop is yours. And all this is also for you, wherever you are.